Hello, the internet. Happy Friday and welcome to another episode of Enter the Popverse. I am your video producer and host, Ashley Victoria Robinson, here for another exciting adventure into the Popverse. That has not enough syllables to do the Spiderverse illusion that I want to do, but you know what? We're here. It's Spiderverse weekend, and we're very, very excited to get into it. Don't forget, of course, you can be as amazing as Jake Hefner and sound off in the chat. So when our super special, super sexy judges, we're on a competition reality show right now. Guests join us later in the show. You can ask them all your questions live. Happy Friday to you as well, Jake Hefner. I want to remind everyone, of course, that the Popverse is a virtual realm created by Read Pop, where we celebrate the best in TV, movies, and comics. And you can find everything that we talk about today, so much more than we do here at all times, over at thepopverse.com. It's my favorite place on the internet, and I hope it will become your favorite place as well. We're doing a ton of fun stuff, including live shows, and I want to remind you that our next live show is coming up at the end of June, the beginning of July 4th weekend. That is Florida SuperCon in Miami, Florida, and we just announced earlier this week all of the super special, super exciting panels that are going on over there, including some stuff hosted by yours truly, that if you're coming live, I hope you'll be sure to come and support. I'm super excited to do all of them. Please come and see me at Florida SuperCon. Please don't leave me all alone. It'll be so sad. For everybody celebrating, of course, I want to remind you that June is Pride Month. Happy Pride! Isn't this cute? I got this at DragCon a couple weeks ago. So happy Pride to all of my queer siblings, brothers and sisters. I love you. I see you. You're wonderful. You're perfect. You look like Linda Evangelista. And Popverse is doing incredible Pride content all month long. And enjoy a Cocaine Bear ad while you're at it. Be sure you check out all the special things that we are running across all of our platforms. And we have a really, really great catch-all right there where you can find everything. Okay. My friends, I know you came here live today because you saw the thumbnail, because graphic design is my passion. One of these people is a real boy and one of these people is a puppet. I leave it up to you to decide which is which. Please put your hands together and join me in welcoming for the first time a creative team together, a duo. Can you believe that anyone trusted me to do it? The men, the myth, the legends behind the upcoming Alan Scott miniseries, Tim Sheridan and Cian Tormey. Welcome!
Hi. This is really the first time you've had a creative team on?
Oh, look, I can't put the lower third up because Cian's face goes away, and that's so tragic.
Wait, hold on. I'll sit over here.
There, we're all really good at spatial relations. We've designed this really nice panel. It's definitely not because it's too big for the design layout of this interface, and that's okay.
The names are so big, that they can't.
His name's in comics. Why am I behind Tim? This always happens. Okay.
Because Tim is the real boy.
It's true. It's true. Both puppets.
But yes, this is my first time having the full creative team, so. Now you can't say nasty things about each other, throw each other under the bus, which is definitely what happens every time a full creative team comes on, or singles people just talk smack about each other. Everyone, very excited to see you. Okay, so let's start out. Happy Pride, everybody. I want to start by asking, DC Pride Through the Ages has just launched. We're teasing the bigger thing, the bigger story that you all are working on, but how has the reception been? How has it been in the last, 24 hours for both of you to finally put this out in the world?
No, our story isn't out yet.
But you're both credited on DC Pride.
We're in DC Pride Through the Years #1, which is out June 13th.
Oh, there you go. That's my bad.
And there's a fantastic 2023 DC Pride issue that just came out, and everybody should check that out. And we were very fortunate enough to be the anchor original, the only original story in the DC Pride Through the Years #1 coming out June 13th. So, so it's, nobody's seen it.
Okay, so tease it for me then. Let's take two. What can you tease for your upcoming debut?
Well, it is absolutely a kickoff
Mhm.
to our Alan Scott, the Green Lantern series that will debut in October.
Mhm.
And it is a story. I don't know how much I want to
Spill the
avoid
tea.
spoilers. I feel like I should just say spoilers. I should just talk about it. I think people know at this point that we've introduced in DC canon a series, a bunch of characters who were like removed from the timeline, who were removed from canon. Kind of happened at like the end of Flashpoint Beyond, and we've seen it happen in Jeff Johns' titles,
Mhm.
current titles at DC. And one of the, you might have seen the really awesome classic Who's Who entry for the Red Lantern, the classic Golden Age Red Lantern, Alan Scott's arch nemesis. And this story is a story that will, while telling more about Alan Scott's story of living in the 30s and 40s, as we now know, a closeted gay hero during that. We're also going to learn the origin of the Red Lantern. So lots of really fun, cool stuff. And it all starts with a kickoff prologue in DC Pride Through the Years #1, out June 13th, as I said.
Also, thank you, Graham, for having my back. The sneaky scheduling of DC Pride editions. But I have to say, what a lovely problem to have that there is so much DC Pride content coming out in the next
Yeah.
4 weeks. So
Yeah.
I take that blame. I put it on my shoulders. I'm
No,
so
no,
glad
don't worry.
though that you talked about including the Red Lanterns, because I wanted to ask at a later question about bringing in other Green Lantern, like larger universe mythology, because Alan Scott's a character who sometimes can be thought of as like living in his own universe. So how did you both sort of navigate bringing him into that larger Green Lantern core?
Cian, did you want to take that one?
Well, no, well, so the thing is, I think it's probably best if you take that one, Tim, in terms
Yeah.
of story, and I can certainly talk about how I approach it in terms of the art. If
Let's
that-
do it.
So,
Yeah.
so what's so cool about Alan Scott, and obviously everybody knows, being the first Green Lantern, and over the years we know, like there was a period I remember when I was growing up when we were trying to figure out, like, is he connected in some way to the Green Lantern Corps? Like, how does that work? And happily, all that stuff kind of got explained in continuity over the years, and some of the conversations we've been having around this book have been about how we see the power that Alan Scott wields, and how it connects to the powers that the Green Lantern Corps use. So we are, you will see some new surprises, some things that will tie into the later Green Lantern mythology that is revealed to us later on in continuity. And we'll see how some of that stuff sort of kicked off, and why it is the way it is. So, I mean, without really giving anything away, the power of the Green Lanterns is, if it is magical, if its origins are magical, and if its origins are relate to all the magic in the universe, I think we've only just begun to scratch the surface of what that power can do.
Oh, that's a good tease, though.
I mean, Alan could do some stuff that like Hal and later guys couldn't do.
Yeah.
And, but the question is why? And who figured it out, and what does it all mean? Alan's very much trying to figure it out as he goes. And so is Vladimir, the Red Lantern. So.
And what they discover may not be the same, because they're discovering things about their power, but independently of each other. So you could end up with some interesting interactions when they fight, because they do different things.
Oh man, people are
in
like
the middle of it right now. So
yeah.
People are like sounding off. Like, its new series sounds like it has a lot of potential to really make Alan Scott stand out as a character. Star power, baby.
Power. This is it. This is it.
Where are my deep cut nerds at? Yes. Okay, Cian, I can't let you like move on to the next question without asking about the art side of things. And Alan Scott has, for a Green Lantern, a deeply complicated costume.
Yeah. So what's interesting about the costume is, so I was doing test sketches of him, just trying to It's always difficult when you start certainly a character that you haven't really done before. And I have drawn Alan before because I did him in Injustice.
Yes.
But the thing was, I think you're always trying to look for some specific thing that unlocks the idea behind it. And I was drawing some test sketches. It was his mask initially that I started. So I was just trying to get the shape right, and I realized that he's clearly based on Zorro. And as soon as I figured out that with the blouse and with the mask and everything, I was like, I get it. And also now I completely understand his body language. I understand everything. And so I've got a couple of pages now of him in action, and the action sequence of issue 1, which I'm working on at the moment. I haven't gotten into that, but I'm really excited. But already it feels like he feels different to Alan, which he should. But he feels confidence and stuff. So I think that was the moment when the whole thing just unlocked and just kind of fell open, and it's been really, really easy ever since.
I admired too you having the thought of like reaching back historically to something like Zorro, which obviously would have been such an inspiration for Golden Age superheroes to begin with, those pulp heroes that we had.
Yeah, so I mean, I've talked to Tim about this before, but like I'm a huge fan of that whole era, all of the French classics and stuff, and I've chewed Tim's ear off a million times. But all of the guys like Fantomas and Arsène Lupin and all of the Three Musketeers, all of those, like those really high action adventure stuff. All of that was like, as soon as we started talking about this, it all just, I was like, please let me do this. Like, please. The whole energy of it, everything. Like, I've loved these stories for years. So yeah, going back to Zorro and understanding the time and the energy with which they were written, it's just, yeah, it's been a dream. So.
Okay, Ashley, if I can jump in for just 1 second, because I want to say something which I'm just going to embarrass Cian Tormey right now, which is this. I have, in my short career in comics, I've been looking for a creative partner who is excited to really dig in and get nerdy about some of the deep cut stuff and some of the details. And from the moment that Cian and I met, I've been like, it's so great to have somebody who I can talk about with this stuff. And to the point where the opening scene of issue 1 of Alan Scott, the Green Lantern, is a scene that was completely an idea that in conversation between Cian and I, Cian said, hey, what about this? And it was so perfect. And it was exactly what we needed. And I was so happy to write it. And I love that we're starting the issue, starting the series with that scene. So yeah. It's been a joy, really.
Yeah, that meant a lot to me as well, Tim, to be honest. When I opened the script and I saw the first thing was one of the things that we had discussed, this little piece of
your
history.
Idea.
Yeah, that I loved. And you wrote the thing straight in. And I was like, oh my God, it was perfect.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
Friends, viewers now and in the future, I think we just witnessed like a modicum of the origin story of such an incredible team. Thank you for sharing that. That was so beautiful. We usually don't get into like feelings and like really sweet emotional moments here on Exodus. Happy
I have a good embarrassing moment of one of the first conversations that Tim and I had. Don't worry, it's not too bad, Tim. But, so we started talking. We didn't know each other very well. So we didn't know each other at all. So I was doing tentative DMing on Twitter. And I was also talking to somebody else on another chat platform. And not paying attention, I was going to make a joke to the other person that I was talking to. And I opened my browser and I typed in my search term and then hit enter. And then went to look at it and realized that I posted it into the chat with Tim, who I didn't know. And Tim, in the middle of this conversation that I thought was going really well, just received this message that just said, Earthworm Jim, no suit. And I was like, I can either explain this or I can just pretend that it's fine and that I do this all the time. So
it was the greatest non sequitur ever. And I immediately, of course, Googled Earthworm Jim, no suit, and don't do that.
I was like, that has to be horrifying, right? Like on the rules of the internet.
You will be red flagged by the government. They will take away your computer if you Google that.
So about a week later, Tim texted me, and because he was just checking to see if he had my number, and he sent this really cryptic text message that was like, "Sheridan here, is that Cian Tormey?" And I realized it was Tim. And so I texted him back and just went, Earthworm Jim, no suit, thinking we had a thing. And he never replied. And I was like, oh, shit. Oh, sorry. I shouldn't have cursed. But I was like, oh, God, I thought we had a thing. We don't have a thing. I've just done it twice. Oh, God.
So what I'm hearing is San Diego Comic-Con, we're doing an Earthworm Jim No Suit cosplay.
Oh my God. Please don't. Nobody needs to see that.
You know what? I'm in. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, I'll be the suit.
We actually have such a great question from Time Trainer who says, can you tease any choices in either art or story to make Alan's power stand out against the core Green Lanterns? I'm going to use this a little bit to segue into, before we came live, we combined all of our powers of yelling at Nick Valenti to bring a piece of art to share with everyone. So I'd love to do that now and have you talk about that, and then maybe answer the rest of the question if you really feel like it. So this is the beautiful, the much.
Can we set this up? Can we set this up?
Oh, yeah, it's a good idea. It's a good idea.
Because there's so much about this story that, I mean, we're having a lot of fun, and the story is fun and dynamic, and it's a superhero story. But our understanding of Alan as a closeted gay hero in the 1930s and 40s opens up the very honest reality that things were difficult. I mean, this story is about coming out of the darkness into the light. And so in order to tell that story, we have to see the dark times and we have to see the light times. And one of the things that Cian is so good at, is so strong with, is expression and emotion and acting. So this is a scene early on that we see in issue 1 between Alan and really the first love of his life.
Dun, dun, dun. It's so beautiful.
It felt like an appropriate image to share, considering the month we've just come into. I think the way the story was pitched to me actually was just that, like, so we've got this hero, and I mean, we're talking about a period in American life where, in the comics at least, that when these guys were heroes, they were heroes. I mean, really heroes. There was no grim, dark anti-hero stuff. These guys were enjoyed for what they could do. And so when we were talking about this at the beginning, the thing that really kind of caught me was just, he's a hero when he's the Green Lantern. But when he's Alan Scott, he's a criminal just because of who he is. And so this central conflict is there. So this whole idea of who he is and who he's afraid of being is the opposite of your standard story of people finding out, like, they want, any of these heroes don't want people to find out what their secret identity is. Alan doesn't want people to find out what his actual identity is, and that's just so heartbreaking. And he's a hero, and everybody loves him for who he is, but nobody, like, he can't find acceptance even within himself for who he is when he's not a hero. And so, sorry, Tim, go ahead.
Great conflict. I mean, he's a, like you say, a hero in the light and a criminal in his own bedroom, and he knows that, and he's like the only person who knows that. And this, when we meet him in 1941, the Justice Society has formed, and he is, like so many of us, like when I was in the closet back in the day. He keeps his distance. He keeps he's not fully engaged with the team because he doesn't want to involve them in this criminal life. He doesn't want them to know who he is, but also he doesn't want to harm them in any way too, because ultimately he's a hero and he thinks in those terms all the time. So it's just very complicated time for him. And that's why it was so important for me. So much stuff lives in the subtext and in the acting that, if we were doing a live action movie, you get great actors who can do this. What you need is a great artist who can bring that kind of acting and expression to the page and really tell the subtextual story of what's going on behind the eyes for characters like Alan.
Also, anyone from DC who might be watching this, this would be a great print. This would be a great postcard. This would be a great piece of merchandise.
Do you know, by the way, this isn't the panel I was talking about.
Oh, it's not.
Before, when we came on. I think it was panel 4 I was talking about, right?
Okay.
Which is, which we probably can't show that, but I'll tease it and say, I love that.
Oh, it's the one where they're looking deeply into each other's eyes.
Well, sort of.
Sort of.
It's much more complex and interesting than the way you just pitched it, Cian.
Oh.
The writer hat just came on.
No, it's really cool. It's really cool. But I mean, that whole page, that entire page, as you've heard me say many times, is, my heart. My heart.
Yeah, I think people are getting that already because the comments are like, this is about to be the most meaningful comic ever. I love it. This is the creative team of all time. I already know it in my heart. Like,
no pressure.
Hype is real.
What I can say, though, is that we are two guys who really care a lot about telling this story.
Yeah.
There's a huge responsibility. We know Alan hasn't had his own title in nearly 75 years.
Yeah, 1949, I think.
And while there's been a lot of canon and story around his life, we now understand him in a very different light. And so to get to go back, to have the privilege to go back and sort of retell some of his early days from the perspective that we now understand about his life, there's a lot of responsibility there. And we really care a lot about getting it, getting it right, at least making it feel right. And there, oh my gosh, look at that, that Talaski cover.
Yeah, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I would say, just because somebody should speak some sugar about Tim. It's very easy to, like, one of the things that I look for in any script, obviously, is just if I want, because one of the things I love to draw is like to bring the feeling out of something. Very easy in Tim's scripts, because in that particular page, like, this is a really, really tender, but there's conflict in the middle of this moment between Alan and the first love of his life, who you'll be introduced to very soon.
You don't want to say his name right now.
Well, he didn't, so I'm not going to say anything. But trying to find a way to because Tim writes just beautiful dialogue, and finding the emotion in between these two guys over this 2 pages. It's only 2 pages, and it's a roller coaster, of just like them coming up to the line of what they're prepared to admit about themselves and what they're not and stuff. It's just so easy. Like, it's rich, and just there's so much for me to do, and so, like, it's just, it's a joy to try and bring that to life, because
that stuff is very real. I think that the conflict that Alan feels will play out on the page. Not only the conflict, the superhero conflicts, but also the internal struggle, and he's having it even before he puts on the ring, and you'll see that in DC Pride Through the Years #1 as well, the kickoff prologue story,
which is definitely out next week.
We got
you see the beginnings of that, you see the shape of that, and then we get to explore it a little bit more when we get into the series.
Okay, I've kept you now twice as long as I promised I would keep you, so I will send you off into the ether with my final question, and that is, because in the Popverse we celebrate the best in TV, movies, and comics. So what are you both geeking out about right now that you are not working on?
Actually, can I just say, before we answer that, Tim?
No.
I think we can share the full page.
Oh.
Yeah. So
did we send that to Ashley?
Yeah. So Ashley should have it.
I will pull it up.
You know what?
Yeah.
Just so excited.
Just because it would be lovely to talk about it, and obviously we don't want to keep you, and I'll happily nerd out about all of the Creed.
You're not keeping me. Keeping you.
I'd be here all day.
Yeah, me too. So
where you are, Ian.
Start talking about what you're enjoying while I pull this up.
It's 7:30 p.m. where I am, so like people aren't even going out for another 2 or 3 hours.
So you're going out to see Spiderverse tonight, Cian? Is that what you're doing?
I don't know if I will, just because I'm going to have to go and find a translated version of it somewhere. I'm not watching that in Spanish. I'm watching that in English. So I don't know if I want to trek the whole way across the city to try and find it. So I think I'll just go and sit on a terrace and have a beer instead and think about Spider-Man, which is fine.
Yeah,
so possibly Spiderverse is something that we're enjoying right now.
Oh, 100%. It's Spider-Man 2099. Yeah, I can't wait. This is a dream come true.
Okay, I have the full page.
Yes.
Everyone at home, I need you to drum roll, please, for yourselves. And
sneak preview.
Full page, first time ever, exclusive.
Happy Pride, everybody.
Happy Pride.
So beautiful. Tell me everything. Break my heart.
Yeah.
So this is the second page of the interaction of these guys. They've stolen away to a motel room to share this budding illicit thing between them. And as Johnny, which is Alan's lover here, he starts to talk to him about the future, and Alan within himself just pulls away. And he just says, like, he can't. And part of him is afraid of what this all means. Part of him is still at war with himself because he invokes God and says what we're doing is wrong. And his Johnny says, like, everything's wrong these days. Like, it doesn't matter anymore. You know, like, you can't live like this. Sorry, Tim, I don't want to take literally your word.
Yeah, no. Well, since we said it, yes, this is Johnny. And one of the opportunities here was to get to have a little fun with explaining an inconsistency in Alan Scott's story that's existed for so long, which is that sometimes we've seen Alan referred to as Alan Wellington Scott, and sometimes we've seen him referred to as Alan Ladd Scott. And we've tried to explain that over the years, and I think to varying effect. And but no, that is Corporal Johnny Ladd right there.
My heart.
And it's panel 4 you can see down there, which is the one I keep talking about, which is, to me, it's I think I don't even know if I have any dialogue in there, but if I do, I'm probably gonna pull it out, because look at that panel. Like, it says everything without, it doesn't need a balloon. Like, it's great.
And that's where, like, the acting that you talked about comes into the art side of things.
Yep.
Yeah, just the journey that Alan goes on this page of just, and in quietude in himself, and then he's being convinced by the arguments that Johnny's making in panel 2. Johnny makes a joke, and of course Alan's back in because he wants to be, and then it's Alan's turn to comfort Johnny with a doubt that he has, and then the two of them find comfort in each other. And so, like, you really, the two of them, and this is the way Tim writes it, like, there's so much can happen, and you have to convey it all this way. Ordinarily, in the work the way I would normally work, I wouldn't layer panels like this, but there's no space between them. There's no negative space on this page until they are together on their own, isolated at the end. But this is just immediate. It's intimate. They're layered over and over and over, and it should just kind of bring you down to this moment where.
But it's also early days, and you'll see in the kickoff prologue story in Pride Through the Years,
June 13th.
You'll see that like with so many love stories, those early days can be absolute bliss. It can also be a little nerve-wracking, as we'll see with Alan, but there's also great bliss, but things can turn so quickly, and circumstances can change. So Alan's story has always been, if you look back through the canon, always been touched by tragedy, great tragedy throughout even the most beautiful moments of his life. They have tragic underscoring, and so there's a balance. There's a balance there. These are even in the conflict of this scene that we're looking at here, there is just great bliss and beauty that comes out of it. But like I said, it's early days.
And it's also, in superheroes, we think of punching and fighting and these huge epic moments. And
that's coming too. Don't worry.
Well, I'm sure, but this is like a quiet moment that is also really revealing. And I mean, I don't know if anyone has been seeing the comments, but like, the feelings, I'm screaming, my heart. Stunning art. I'm adding this to my pull list, and I've never read an Alan Solo series. This sounds like a story that's going to make me cry, I swear.
I hope so. That's what we want to do. We want to make you cry.
I think you're about to like emotionally devastate a lot. I mean that is the highest compliment possible.
You know, there's ups and downs, and it's a rocky time for Alan Scott, but don't ever forget that Alan Scott is a born hero and a born leader. And even born heroes and born leaders sometimes have to figure out that that's who they are.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything better that we could say after all of the emotional roller coaster that this has been for me personally. This has been so lovely. Besides Spiderverse, is there anything else we want to shout out that we are enjoying right now, friends?
Oh my gosh, I just watched, I just burned through every episode of I Think You Should Leave season 3, which I think is hilarious and I love it.
And I have
totally
just
the opposite.
I have just gone through 2 seasons of a Korean zombie show set like 500, 600 years ago.
Yes.
Or, well, in feudal Korea. I'm not entirely sure what the era is, but it's crazy. So that's been quite different. So that's what I've been doing in my spare time.
Wow, K-drama, not what I expected. I love that. Okay, the gigantic graphic is coming back, so we're all gonna align ourselves properly, and then we're gonna say, Tim Sheridan and Cian Tormey, thank you for joining me today. This has been a roller coaster in the best way possible. I hope you will come back, maybe as a duo, maybe on your own in October, and we can talk more Alan Scott and break some more people's hearts.
Would be a pleasure.
All right, friends.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Ooh.
Let's send Tim first. We'll let Cian have the big head. Oh, there's the tablet. Well, my friends, I think this is officially going to be the very longest Enter the Popverse ever. My mind has been so blown. My heart is not ready for it. My computer can't handle more pictures to bring up. So please join me in another round of applause for welcoming our unofficial co-host, our unwilling co-host, Graeme McMillan, back to Enter the Popverse.
I'm very willing. But also, can we just talk about how great that was?
I had the best time.
I spent the entire time just going, but that's amazing. Oh, look at that art. Yeah, that was great. That was really, really fun.
I know, how lucky am I? But now you're here and we're going to talk about
something entirely different.
So, we had you last week on to explain the state of comics such as it is. And you alluded to the Eisners, and I said we don't have time for the Eisners today. So today,
so then you bring me back to talk about the Eisners.
We have time to talk about the Eisners. Graeme, WTF is going on with the Eisners?
Well, thankfully now it seems to have calmed down, question mark. The Eisners were announced 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
And amongst the many names on there were 4 nominations for Thomas Woodruff for his book Francis Rothbart. That immediately led to a lot of people going, wait. I have some concerns. And the concerns about Woodruff were multiple. There were a lot of things that people wanted to bring up. Both in terms of the book itself, but also he was formerly the chair of comics and illustration at School of Visual Arts in New York. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of allegations about his behavior at SVA. A lot of allegations that were troubling, to say the least. Mm-hmm. Both in terms of how he conducted himself interpersonally with students, but also some things that he did structurally. Mm-hmm. And again, like I'm emphasizing again, allegations. I am like, I have no first-hand knowledge. I do not want to get myself or Popverse or you into any hot here.
Allegedly.
Exactly. A lot of allegedlys in here. But because of this, and also the book people had issues with, in part because, there was the whole, is it comics because it's illustrated art, which, you and I have talked about before. But also there's some subject matter stuff in the Francis Rothbart book that is questionable. Mm-hmm. I think is a polite way of saying it.
Not done, perhaps.
Yes. And so there were a lot of people very concerned about this. To the point where there's a petition, or there was a petition to get him stripped of the nominations. Yep. About half a week or so after that came out, after the petition started, both his publisher, Fantagraphics, and Woodruff put out statements that were essentially like, I stand behind the work, tough, basically.
Yeah.
And then by the end of that week, a week after the nominations were announced, Woodruff had withdrawn.
Yeah.
He had withdrawn his name from the nominations, which does not automatically mean he was still not eligible for the awards. So the Eisner organization then had to say he's also withdrawn from voting.
Yeah.
His name is still technically on the ballot. He is still technically an Eisner nominee for the 4 categories he was nominated in, but he can't win now because of what's happened.
Yeah, and I think what's particularly difficult about the way this has all played out, particularly in the echo chamber that is all of our Twitter algorithms, right? Which is feeding you both things that you agree with and things that you will not agree with because you're more likely to interact with both of those things, is not only does this reflect a certain way on the work, the creator, and the publisher, but it reflects on the Eisners. And the Eisners have been, of all the larger scale entertainment awards, I feel like sort of they've remained fairly well regarded, and this is a fairly significant blow against their sort of larger reputation.
I mean, you say that, but don't forget there was, I think 2 years ago or maybe 3 years ago, there was the voting irregularities.
That's true.
You know,
I guess what I mean is no one's gotten hit yet, Graeme, and I say yes.
I was an Eisner judge 5 years ago, and it was genuinely one of the highlights of my professional career, and honestly, one of the highlights of my life. I really enjoyed being an Eisner judge.
Yeah.
But it was also eye-opening in that you see how it is run, and that you see the flaws and the drawbacks.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's come from this, even after Woodruff removed his name from contention, is a lot of people asking for more transparency in how the Eisners is run. And I think that could only be a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, I think that we need to have more transparency in how the shortlist is agreed upon, how it's arrived at, how everyone ends up in the nominee categories they're in. You know, I think one of the things that happened this year, and this might just be my personal opinion, I am shocked that Kate Beaton's Ducks is only in 2 categories.
I agree. I thought Ducks was gonna run away with
I thought it was going to have everything. I thought it was going to be everything, and it only appears twice. And it just seems mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
But again, having been a judge, I can also see behind the scenes how that could have happened just through the way that the judging process to come up with the shortlist works. And it would be nice to have more visibility into this. You know, it'd be nice to see people were asking, how do the judges get selected? And I've been a judge. That's a mystery to me. And that was me.
If anyone does have questions about being a judge, I think you could ask Graeme and he'll do his best to answer them.
Sure, it was a strange experience. Anyone who wants to ask strange questions, no, but there is so a lot of people have come away from this really just going, well, how does the Eisners work?
Yeah,
how do they work, and how could they work? And I think that's a conversation that is really worth having, you know, and not just about the Eisners. How do awards in general work? How can we properly recognize these things and make sure that people are heard when they have complaints, when they have concerns?
Because there is a huge difference between an institution like the Eisners and something like the Ringo Awards, where the Ringo Awards are open to whoever wants to vote. So like, I think it's derogatory to distill it down to being like, it's a popularity contest, but it is about engaging an audience in a way that the Eisners is more about like engaging with a specific type of person or a specific group of people sometimes.
Yeah. And I'm going to get on my horse for a second.
Do it.
So there was a lot of people talking about Woodruff and him getting taken off.
Yeah.
And there was some weird stuff going on there as well. There was discussion about how many copies his book sold. That should have nothing to do with an award.
Right, because again, that's populist, so that's a different metric.
Yeah, but also there is some amazing work out there that people haven't seen. One of my favorite things about being a judge was seeing work that I never would have seen otherwise.
Yeah, and
finding creators and finding work that touched me so deeply that I did not know existed. You know, and that's one of the beauties of the things of the Eisners, where you can get people on there you've never heard of, and then you look back at it and you're like, This is the greatest thing ever. I'm so glad that this exists. So yeah, it shouldn't be a popularity contest. And also, while I 100% understand the complaints about Woodruff,
Yep.
and also understand that like the allegations are really serious and are truly heinous behavior, I also really worry about the idea of establishing we don't like this person, therefore we can get them stripped of nominations as a precedent, because I think that's something that not only can but would be abused in the future. You know, there are parties out there who would not like people for, you know, entirely invalid reasons, shall we say, that could abuse that. And so I really think that's a dangerous thing to put in the sand.
I would love to sort of leave you on this question. Do you think, because as you say, it's been like an almost 3-week-long process to get to where we are today, speaking about it with the withdrawals, and with that still kind of nothing that's a bigger issue has been addressed, because that actually all exists outside of the Eisners. Do you think if there had been a definitive statement or definitive action taken faster, would the comics community as a whole feel better about what's happened? Because do you think it's the 3 weeks of indecision that has led us to...
The 3 weeks of indecision were a problem, and it allowed it to turn into these multiple conversations, right? Because there is does Thomas Woodruff deserve to be nominated? Is Thomas Woodruff a bad person? But also, what are the Eisners doing? Do you know what I mean? Like, the Eisners issued no statement. Well, issued no statement about this at all publicly until they accepted that Woodruff had requested to have his name withdrawn. That was it. That was their only public statement. And there was this parallel conversation of, how does this work? Can we see how this works? Can we address how these awards are arrived at and these lists are arrived at? And honestly, that's something that I think it would have been to the Eisner's benefit to have been part of that conversation, to have been able to address it, even if they didn't give answers, even if they didn't, you know, give a definitive statement that everyone would have liked. Because, hi, it's the internet, it's comics. You're never going to get one statement that will make everyone happy. It doesn't exist. But being part of that conversation, I think, would have only made everything better.
I'll say this, it's going to make for the most interesting Eisner Awards in a really long time. San Diego is 6-8 weeks away.
I'm stunned that your non-existent wristwatch didn't tell you the exact date.
Look, the only date I know right now is June 13th, so I don't know anything else about the rest of that.
What happens on June 13th, actually?
Oh, you know what? We get Tim Sheridan and Cian Tormey's Alan Scott T's debut in DC Pride Through the Years, because there's a couple of things called DC Pride, and Google was not my friend on that. Let me tell you what. That's why we've gone too long.
Well, I'll leave then. That's subtle.
Thanks, Graeme. Thanks for joining us. See you. All right, friends. We have gone long, but I can't leave without talking about Spiderverse. And let me tell you, I haven't seen Spiderverse yet. So I'm going to bring on someone who has, and we're going to do it respectfully and spoiler-free. So if you have Spiderverse questions, please be sure to drop them in the chat and we can bring them right up. Join me in our final round of applause of the episode in welcoming Deputy Editor TIffany Babb to the stream. Oh, there we are. Hi, Tiffany.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you? Oh, she looked glam today.
Oh, thank you. It's been a great show so far. I've loved these interviews.
I know it's been the right side of chaos.
Yes, the right side as opposed to the wrong side.
Yeah, because sometimes that happens too. So you were one of the illustrious, one of the lucky few who got to see Spider-Verse early. So give me really a summation of your spoiler-free thoughts.
Oh, spoiler-free thoughts. I loved it. I thought it was great. I think everyone's gonna like it. It's a very likable movie. Although I did just see a headline comparing it to Dark Knight. And I'm like, do we have to do this? Like, does everything have to be compared to another movie? Like, it's very annoying. But the movie itself was great. I think the animations stand out. It's better than the animation is even better than the first. It tops like even that, which is very exciting. And it is a darker movie, but not in a way that feels disconnected to the rest of the story. It feels like natural progression. Miles is growing up. He's going into the real world and seeing what heroism can and cannot do. It's really cool to see all the spider people and spider things, I guess, because it is not, there's this spider cat and everything, as we've mentioned on Twitter.
Yes.
With intern Brecco also debuting as Spider Cat.
Debut.
Very fun. So it's really fun. It is part one of a two-parter film thing.
Okay.
So it's Across the Spider-Verse. Next year we're getting Beyond the Spider-Verse. But it doesn't, well, it does have cliffhangers. It doesn't feel like, oh, I only got half of the story. They do a good job of balancing that out too.
Were there any of the new Spider people that were introduced who really stood out for you?
Yeah, I really liked Spider-Punk, and we're debuting a Spider-Punk explainer today on Popverse, so y'all should check that out. Spider-Man India was also really good, and of course Spider-Man 2099, played by Oscar Isaac, which is very fun.
Ooh, I have a great comment from Tom Trainer that I would love to see if you have thoughts on. Part one thing is my only concern going into this movie. You did say that it is a wrapped up plot with some sort of dangling participles, but do you think there's any need to be concerned about this being part one of two?
I don't think so. I think part of it is, number one, you kind of, even going into this movie, you kind of have faith with this creative team and this, I hesitate to use the word brand, but this story, right? Like, we know the first movie was pulled off really well. We're going in with a certain amount of expectation. And the way that this movie is set up, you're also expecting them to pull off chapter 3. As for like the parts, I think they do something really clever, which is they kind of frame the story with Gwen. So while the main storyline isn't like completely concluded, someone's storyline is concluded. No one's leaving or anything, but you kind of get this emotional settled feeling at the end of the movie, like, we have moved to the next chapter. So you're not going out of the movie theater thinking, like, I can't believe I have to wait a whole year. You're going out of the movie theater thinking, oh, well, I really wish I could see this movie right now, but I'm also really excited to have seen this other incredible movie.
But I have to go home and write about it for Popverse.
Yes, also you have to stay up really late tonight and just get the stuff done.
So it's not giving like Pirates of the Caribbean 2, where you're like, well, I guess in 3 years we're going to see Naomi Harris turn a ship upside down.
Yeah. Oh gosh, Pirates of the Caribbean.
That's a timely reference for everyone, right?
Also true. But I think, and also like the next one's coming out in a year, which is soon.
Yeah. We have a great question from Jake Hefner that is, how does the soundtrack compare to the first one? Any instant bangers like Sunflower or what's, you'll never top Sunflower in my opinion. Like, that's an all-time excellent superhero song.
It's hard to top either of those, but the soundtrack is very good. And also they use the score really well, I think, in the same way that they did in the first one. The music is all really good, but I don't think the movie used music in the same way that the first one did, in the way that like you leave the movie and you're like, oh, that scene is that song. Yeah. In the same way, but there is really good music in the movie.
I would also love to know, because a huge part of what I love about the original Spider-Verse movie is the running themes of Miles has to stand up Spider-Man and Peter Parker has to take my favorite Peter Parker, has to take the leap of faith. Are there really clear like character messages throughout this movie like we saw in the first one?
Yeah, I think one of the central messages is like how you see the world. Miles sees the world one way, and I think some of the other characters see the world in a different way. And that leads them to conflict, even though they're all kind of trying to be heroes and they're all trying to save the world and the multiverse, right? At the end of the day, they have very different ideas of what's the right way to go about it. And I think it's a very interesting concept to bring into these Spider-Verse stories.
I do want to let people know that if you do want like a full spoiler and a deep explainer, we do have that available on thepopverse.com. So go check that out. I'm going to pop this down because the link is super, super long, but it's already there. So if you are the person, and I know so many people like this in my life, you want to know everything to go in, you want to be able to explain it to your friends, we do have that resource available. Tiffany, the last question that I want to ask you about ye olde across, the across the intos, the beyond the, it's like it's gonna get away from me.
It's hard. It is confusing.
Like Spider-Verse 2.
Yes.
The last thing I want to ask you about Spider-Verse 2 is again, we're trying to sort of skirt spoilers as much as possible because most people, including myself, haven't seen it. But is there a moment or a character or even an Easter egg that you think people really need to keep an eye out for? For example, in the first movie, when Peter B. Parker got to Miles World and he was looking around in Times Square and there was like Coca Soda instead of Coca-Cola and there was Clone College instead of Clone High. Like, are there any little moments like that that you think people really need to keep their eyes open for?
There are more, like 10 times more moments in this movie. It's like an Easter egg every second. Like, I mean, we were thinking about doing an Easter egg piece.
Yeah.
But I don't even think we can do that until like it's released on video on demand, because you have to like pause every single frame. Because I mean, even we saw in the trailer, there's like scenes where there's like 100 spider people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't have time to recognize, oh yeah, that's the one from that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this movie, when people rewatch it, which I'm sure people will,
Mm-hmm.
they'll be picking up even more stuff. But go in excited to see stuff that you recognize, but it also doesn't bog down the movie, which is good too.
I love that. Tom Trainer being shady. Title's almost as bad as the MCU Spider-Man movies. Yes, I know numbers are ugly, but sometimes they really help. Spider-Man 2, we all know it's the best one. It's still Spider-Man 2. I am hyped to see Mayday, my MCU2 Spider-Girl, and fingers crossed that we see Spiders-Man, who is my favorite absolutely stupid Spider-Man variant.
Amazing.
Who's just like 1,000 sentient spiders that think they're Peter Parker. TIffany, I think we'll have you back to do more Spider-Verse talk after the sort of respectful week and a half, 2-week windows open. But thank you for coming and teasing this with us here today. I appreciate you so very much. Thank you also for waiting until the last segment of the show.
Of course.
All right, I'm going to send you off back into the Popverse. Oh, my dearest, darlingest, beautiful friends, we have reached the end. This was so much fun in so many unexpected ways. Thank you for everyone who joined us. Thank you to Tim and Cian and everyone at DC for being so generous with the Alan Scott stuff that we got to see today. That's not the lower third I wanted to bring up, but weren't they beautiful, sexy, incredible people and so kind to join us here on the show? I want to remind you, of course, that if you want any of the info that we talked about, the stories, the links, the videos, everything is going to be in the description down below as always. And you can always read the full story over at thepopverse.com. That's where I go for all my news. So I know that's where you're going to want to go for all of your news. And while you're over there, why not get yourself a really, really cool Popverse membership? That way you never miss a single thing that we're getting up to. We also shared all of the cool benefits that all of our members are getting this month. So if you are waiting to make this decision, why not go and see what you might be missing out on if you don't get yourself a Popverse membership is all I'm saying. I have been your video producer and host, Ashley Victoria Robinson, with the right lower third today. You can join me live at our next event, Florida SuperCon, at the end of June, the beginning of July. We are so excited for all the stuff that is going on over there. Be sure that you're following us for all of our upcoming announcements for everything Florida SuperCon. As always, the Popverse is a virtual realm created by Read Pop, where we are celebrating the absolute best in TV, movies, and comics. And why don't you do what that little widget says? Why don't you like and subscribe and click that bell so you never miss anything that we are getting up to here in the Popverse, because I would be so sad if you weren't able to join us live. So I want to say thank you, friends. Have a wonderful Friday, and I will see you next time.